In June of 323 BC, within the walls of Babylon, the most powerful man on earth took his final breath. But what happened next defied biology. 1 day passed, then 3, then 6 days went by, and his body refused to rot. In the blistering Mesopotamian heat, his corpse remained entirely pristine, emitting no scent of decay. His generals leveraged this anomaly as absolute proof of his divinity. To them, the lack of corruption was the final sign that Alexander was a literal, immortal god. Modern medical science points toward a physical reality that reframes this miracle entirely. To understand how he survived his own death, we have to look at the toxic lifestyle that led him to Babylon. By the age of 32, Alexander had spent over a decade in constant warfare, enduring multiple wounds and the psychological weight of absolute command. He increasingly turned to the bottle to manage the pressure of his own legend, becoming a reckless and frequent binge drinker. In Macedonian culture, the banquet was a brutal endurance test. They drank their wine undiluted, and some evidence suggests they laced these drinks with heavy hallucinogens like belladonna or mandrake. This culture of excess fueled a dangerous paranoia. During one drunken argument in Samarkand, Alexander became so incensed by criticism that he hurled a javelin through the chest of Clitus, his own loyal general, killing him instantly. Later, at a funeral for an Indian sage, Alexander organized a drinking contest that ended with 35 attendees literally drinking themselves to death. Alexander conquered the ancient world, but his constant drinking was a method of survival that ultimately led to his downfall. He entered a final cycle of self-destruction that shattered his empire at its peak. In June 323 BC, after downing the Chalice of Heracles, over 5 liters of pure wine, Alexander was struck by a sharp, spear-like pain in his back. A severe fever immediately took hold. One theory suggests alcoholism triggered acute necrotizing pancreatitis, where the pancreas digests its own tissue, sending inflammation through the torso. But the timing also points to murder. Toxicologists believe white hellebore, slipped into his wine, would attack his nervous system with similar precision. Over the next 12 days, his physical decline was agonizing. He slowly lost the ability to move his limbs, then his torso, until he lay completely paralyzed and unable to speak. As the king's body failed, the trust among his inner circle evaporated. The sick room became a political powder keg as his commanders realized the world was about to be up for grabs. As Alexander lay paralyzed, his generals crowded the bedside. They were desperate for a clear air, begging for any name that would prevent a civil war. Instead, he offered a final act of spite. When asked who should receive his empire, he whispered "Kratistis" to the strongest. The result was a total explosion of violence known as the Wars of the Diadochi. His generals immediately turned on each other, carving the unified empire into 3 competing kingdoms: the Ptolemies in Egypt, the Seleucids in the east, and the Antigonids in Macedon. General Ptolemy took the betrayal further, hijacking Alexander's funeral cart en route to Macedonia. He stole the body and took it to Egypt, using the corpse to legitimize his own local reign. Alexander's final words ensured that the unity of his empire died with him. He left behind a fractured world and a circle of generals who would spend the next 40 years in a cycle of civil war. But if we return to that sweltering room in Babylon, we find the answer to the core mystery. Why did his body sit in the summer heat for 6 days without rotting? The astonishing lack of decomposition is actually explained by a terrifying biological reality. Alexander the Great was still alive. Modern researchers believe he suffered from Guillain-Barré syndrome, a rare autoimmune disorder that causes ascending paralysis. It likely left him in a state of total immobility, while his mind remained fully sane. This is the phenomenon of pseudothanatos. Because his breathing had become so shallow, ancient doctors, who checked for breath rather than a pulse, mistakenly declared him dead. History's greatest conqueror didn't die in battle. He spent his final 6 days trapped in a paralyzed body, fully conscious, listening to his friends carve up his life's work before they buried him alive.